Welcome back to the I Just Love Footy YouTube channel. Today we're going to dive into the practice match between West Coast and Fremantle from last night. Before we get stuck into it, I want to mention some notable absentees. For West Coast Eagles, we had Jack Darling, Jeremy McGovern, Liam Ryan, Josh Rotham and Dom Sheed all missing for them respectively. And on the other hand, for Fremantle, there wasn't a whole lot missing. They were basically at full strength. However, they were missing Brendan Cox, Josh Corbett and Heath Chapman. Both teams featured a full strength squad for the first 4 periods, and at the end of the fourth quarter the scores were West Coast 5-16-46 and Fremantle 14-14-98. As far as the ebbs and flows of the game, we saw Fremantle taking the lead very early on, maintaining a 3-goal lead for the majority of the first half. West Coast were hanging in tight. However, in the second half the dam walls did open. Turnovers were ubiquitous across the ground for West Coast, particularly in the defensive half, and Fremantle were really able to capitalise on those defensive half turnovers and turn them into goals. As always, the weather in Perth played a significant role in how the game played out as far as the fatigue entering the game. I'm going to work through from the defence all the way through to the forward line, starting with Fremantle's defence. Now, while they weren't heavily pressed, Luke Ryan was valiant as always. He always seems to be getting himself into precarious situations and hurting himself. He copped a nice knee in the back from Luke Jackson yesterday and was in a lot of pain, but as he always tends to do, he bounces back and continues on and finishes the game. The most notable thing for me about Fremantle's backline yesterday was the role changes in obviously Hayden Young going into the midfield, giving Jordan Clark basically the keys to the rebound 50s role, really bouncing back off the back of that half back line and initiating their transition going forward. Brandon Walker, who came on in the second half, was really impressive and was looking to imprint himself in the game as quickly as possible, and he did that. He took some great marks. He was bouncing off the half back line, and he's definitely going to be a really important part in the defensive back line this season for Fremantle as far as transition the ball goes. For the West Coast Eagles defense, essentially under siege for the entirety of the game. So when that is the flow of the game, there are going to be good moments and there are going to be some bad moments and moments where you want to break your TV as a West Coast Eagles fan. I thought Barras had his colours lowered yesterday against the likes of Luke Jackson and Jai Miss, which is unusual for him. He is elite in the air and usually typically would reduce the contest to at least a 50-50. We didn't see that yesterday as much as we had seen in previous seasons, albeit granted this is just a practice match, so just dusting off the cobwebs for a very good player in Barras. Young Callum Jamieson was also impressive as a second key tall, or Callum Jamieson was also quite impressive as one of the key tall backs for West Coast last night. He took a couple of intercept marks, and as I said, it was an overwhelmed West Coast backline defense, so there were good moments and bad moments for Jamieson, but overall what was most important was he was able to play on Fremantle's best forwards and gain that experience and hopefully take that into 2024. Considering Jeremy McGovern isn't out there right now and we don't know how heavily he'll feature, Jamieson might have more to say about how West Coast season goes this season. A real positive note for Elliot Yeo playing off the halfback. He looks like his usual self. I wouldn't go as far as suggesting that he's back to 2018 form, but what I look for when players are coming back from recurring soft tissue injuries is how they're moving around the ground. Do they look confident? What's their body language like? Are they moving with speed and power? And Elliot Yeo ticked all those boxes for me, which is great for not only West Coast fans, but the general AFL fan who wants to see great players play in these games. I think we even saw him roll into the midfield a couple times towards the end of the game, so really keen to keep an eye on Elliot Yeo this season. And lastly, I want to talk about Harley Reid, the #1 pick from 2023. It seems like West Coast are going for a similar project like Collingwood and North Melbourne did with Nick Dacos and Harry Sheezel respectively. It seems like playing off the halfback is the best way to nurture and induct these younger players with all this talent, to get them familiar with the ball and be a bit accountable behind the ball as well. While he didn't do anything amazing, there were a couple glimpses where he was able to showcase his bursting power, breaking out of the defense and also using his blistering kick. I'm not sure if he has the same type of distribution capacity that Nick Dacos and Harry Sheezel possess. However, it seems like they're confident that Harley Reid can do a job off the halfback in his first season. We also did see him roll into the midfield from time to time throughout the game. There was a slight scare in retrospect. However, in the moment, we saw Harley Reid clutch at his knee. The commentators went silent, the crowd went silent. You could feel the energy being sucked out of the game in that moment. Thankfully, it was just a cramp. So we're going to see more of Harley Reid by the sounds of things, and we're not going to see his first season cut short due to a tragic injury. Moving into the Fremantle midfield, and we're going to talk about the man that everybody wants to hear about, Nathan Fyfe. Similar to Elliot Yeo, I was just keen to see how he was going to move around and what was his body language like. And again, passing with flying colours as far as the eye test is concerned. He also collected 20 disposals in the first half alone, 17 of them being handballs. I do know that he and the coaching panel have talked about changing the way he goes about his game in the middle. He's known to be a contested bull, however, they are looking for him to develop an outside game. So there were moments in the game where he could have booted it and probably would have had done so previously, booting it out of a contest, but he was able to lower his eyes rather than kicking it, getting the hands out and breaking the line in the midfield and giving it to his overlapping players who were able to distribute the ball going inside 50. Moving on to the youngsters in Brayshaw and Sarong, they were good with that, setting the house on fire by the looks of things, but the midfield overall did dominate the West Coast midfield. Talking about the significant role change in Hayden Young moving from the halfback into the midfield, it seems like Fremantle really want to take advantage of his penetrating and precise left foot, and we saw that on display yesterday, so that was quite impressive from him, and I'm looking for him to really build on that performance. Talking to the West Coast midfield, Tim Kelly was impressive and looking to build on his best and fairest season last year. He set a great example, and hopefully we can see people join him along the journey in improving West Coast's 2023 season going into this year. One player who I'm really keen to keep an eye out throughout this season is Ruben Jinby for West Coast in the midfield, of course. It seems like he's put on at least 10 kilos of muscle by the looks of things. He is a tank and he is a tackling machine. Although his game was cut short due to what it seemed like concussion symptoms after a collision with Luke Jackson, I think he's really going to take his game to the next level, and I think we're going to be talking more about him as the season goes on for West Coast. Moving on to the ruck stocks for both teams. Sean Darcy did his job as the tap ruckman that he is. I didn't see a whole lot of him going forward. However, Luke Jackson was able to bear that responsibility, and we'll talk a little bit more about him in the forward department. For West Coast, unfortunately, Matthew Flynn has done a hamstring tendon, and therefore we probably won't see him for quite a long time this season, if at all, which means Bailey Williams, who is typically better suited for the ruck forward role, will have to wear the burden of being the number one ruckman for the majority of this season. I don't think there's anyone who can sort of play that number one ruck role outside of Bailey Williams right now for West Coast. In the forward line for Fremantle, Jai Miss, Josh Tracy and Tom Emmett seem to be developing a formidable trio in the forward line. Tom Emmett is said to be the replacement for Lachie Schultz. He played a couple games last season, kicked 2 goals respectively in both those games. He was very energetic yesterday, kicked the goal himself, missed a couple of opportunities, and he managed to keep himself involved in different ways throughout the entirety of the game. It seems like this pre-season, Fremantle have really taken the opportunity to build their forward line around Jai Miss rather than Matt Taberner and Nathan Fyfe in previous years. He is the go-to man this season, and he's going to have a breakout season in my opinion. Matthew Pavlich was quite buoyant when talking about Tom Emmett, Jai Miss and Josh Tracy for this upcoming season. He thinks Josh Tracy can double his scoring tally from 15 to 30. He thinks Jai Miss can go 50 plus, which I definitely believe that too, and Tom Emmett to play his role throughout the season as well. Frederick was great, playing as more of a high half forward flanker. He was prominent and present in a lot of the build-up sequences, linking up from the midfield going inside 50. He played a significant role when it came to those transitions. For the West Coast forward line, obviously not a whole lot of service going forward, but they have a generational player in my opinion in Oscar Allen. Hands like a vice. If the ball is not going down his way, he'll find a way to move up the ground and leave an imprint on the game through his aerial marking contest. Whether he's taking the marks or crashing packs, he's going to leave a dent in that play no matter what. Jake Waterman was really impressive with his tackling pressure around the grounds. He also had a couple set shots on goal, didn't convert any of them. Jake Waterman Waterman really has a good opportunity to thrive as a third key tool this season behind Jack Darling and Oscar Allen. Admittedly, the opposition are going to be plotting their game plans against the likes of Oscar Allen and Jack Darling, and that's where I think Jake Waterman can really take advantage of those scenarios. Talking about the key tool youngsters in Livingston and Marich, they will provide great key tool stocks depth for West Coast in the long term, and I think if there's one thing that West Coast don't have to worry about for the next 10 years is their stocks in their key tools. It doesn't seem like it's ever been a problem for them for as long as I can remember. So if I can give you one positive to take out of that game yesterday, is that there is lots of promise behind those key tools. All in all, while being just a practice match, there are a lot of positives for both teams to take out and build that into their season using the momentum from that game. I think for the AFL world and the general viewers, footy is a better space to be in when both Perth teams are doing well relatively to their situation. So for West Coast to improve this season and Fremantle to flirt with the top 8 is only going to be good for everyone involved in AFL. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.